Yeah, I'm Ruth. I'm a careers advisor. I work in the careers network at the university. So my role really is to support students with career planning and career exploration, and making applications as well. And that's basically what I'm going to talk to you about today. So I'm going to talk about CVs. So I'm going to share my screen. Oh. Okay, so I don't think that's working for some reason. Bear with me. There we go. So I'm going to talk a bit about CVs. I'm going to go through essentially what to include in your CV, how to tailor it to tech. I've got a couple of examples for you to have a look at and share your thoughts on. And I'm also going to briefly touch on like how to, what things you can do to kind of develop your CV. So things you can do to add to your CV. So how to go about actually getting stuff to put on it as well. Oh yeah, and at the end you can ask questions as well. So I'll give you the opportunity to ask questions. In fact, if you've got any questions as we go, you can pop them into the chat. And if I spot them at the time, I'll do my best to answer them. But I'll take questions at the end as well if you've got any. So what is CV for? So you probably know already, a CV essentially is used to apply for a job or express interest in a job. You can also use a CV to ask for a job that might not currently obviously exist. So you can use your CV to make what we call speculative applications. So to approach companies, let them know about you and kind of ask them if they've got any opportunities, even if they're not actually advertising anything. About kind of about 70% of jobs are supposed to be in what we call the hidden jobs market. So there are a lot of opportunities out there that exist, aren't advertised, that are hidden, and it's just a case of asking really and using your network. And that's where your CV, and also if you've got one like a website and things like a LinkedIn profile, can be really useful in those types of applications as well. I've put here to share with employees at events. So currently we're not in a situation where there are face-to-face careers fairs and you can walk around handing out physical copies of your CVs, but one day soon we might be back in a situation where there is, hopefully. You can also have like print off hard copies and hand them out to employers at events as well. Of course, ultimately what you're trying to do on your CV is showcase what you've got, what your skills and experience are, to encourage an employer to invite you to an interview, so to get to the next stage of a recruitment process, essentially. So in a technical CV, which is the type of CV you're going to be writing if you are applying to opportunities in tech, you're going to be really focusing on your technical skills. You're going to be really focusing on any projects that you've been involved with that use your technical skills as well. I've just popped on this slide because I couldn't figure out where else best to fit it, about avoid rating your skills. If you ever kind of like Google CV templates, you'll probably notice that on some of the CV kind of like templates and examples that pop up, there's a tendency for people to kind of list some of their skills and then like rate them. So they might give themselves like 4 out of 5, or they might give themselves a star rating, or sometimes you get like little bar charts with ratings on. I'd really strongly advise against doing that. I think it's particularly tempting when you're writing a CV with technical skills, because it's quite easy to kind of you're listing very specific skills that you've got. but I would say avoid rating them. The reason being is it's all relative. So you don't know what you think you might be really good at. Actually, an employer might, when they hire you, be like, okay, you need to develop in this skill, or vice versa. You might actually undersell yourself, so you might be a complete whiz at something that other people you know, aren't, but you might have only rated yourself 2 out of 5 or something. So it's all relative, and you really need to let the employer judge how good you are at something. The only time when you should really be kind of giving yourself a rating is if you've basically been given some kind of award where you have been rated. So if you've got like if you've done, like, I don't know, an advanced course in Excel or something, and they've said this is advanced, you can say that you are advanced, but that's kind of it really. So always include on your CV your skills, any experience you've got, and that can be things that appear to be unrelated to the kind of role that you're trying to get into, and things that are related as well. And within that, try and include any knowledge that you've used or gained, and of course include your qualifications, include your education. And your CV should be tailored. So what's tailoring? So we talk about this quite a lot in careers. Tailoring essentially is making sure that whoever's going to read your CV thinks that you've written it just for them. Avoid having one version of your CV that you kind of send off to a whole kind of range of different employers. It's a bit tricky when you go into something like a careers fair and you want to hand out copies. You kind of have to go a bit more generic then. But if you're submitting a CV, you know, for one job at a time, you really ought to be tailoring your CV. So that means you're going to have to amend your CV for every opportunity you apply for. So you're going to have a different version of your CV for every opportunity you apply for. To do it, you'll need to find information about the role. You'll need to understand what it is you're applying to so that you can tailor your CV effectively. So, for example, let's show you. I'm just going to show you Goldman Sachs' website. So, this is a page on Goldman Sachs' website where they talk about their engineering graduate opportunities. So their software engineers, in their software engineers, this is the kind of information that they're giving you before you apply on their website. So this is exactly the type of information that you would read through before you apply. Depending on a company and how they go about their recruitment process, you might need to basically highlight which area you're interested in. So here you might need to say that, you know, you're interested in cybersecurity or interested in the software engineering opportunities, and then look at what they're looking for. So Goldman Sachs haven't given you a lot of information about what they're looking for, but they have given you some. You would need to make sure that somewhere in your CV you have evidence the things they're looking for. So make sure you've talked about any knowledge that you have about design and analysis of algorithms, for example. Make sure you can kind of tick off any list that they've given you of things that they're looking for. Make sure it's in your CV. It sounds really obvious, but you'd be amazed at how many students don't do it when they're applying for opportunities. So that's one example. So Goldman Sachs don't give you a lot of information in one place. You would also have to look at other parts of their website. You might go and look on any kind of student forums online. Glassdoor is a really good website to use in terms of people sharing their knowledge about different companies' recruitment processes. So you might need to do a bit of research in order to tailor your CV, tailor your application. But if you're applying conversely to something like the public sector, what you will probably find there is that you get quite a lot of information. So this is an example of a job description with Coventry City Council for a web development officer. And they'll give you tons of information, loads that they're looking for, probably too much. So this is the other thing, you have to really pick out the things that are relevant. So this is a job description and a person specification. So what you would do in this instance when there's loads and loads of stuff is you'd find the person specification. So that is the list of requirements that they're looking for in candidates. So here they've detailed the kind of knowledge they'd expect you to have for this job and the skills and abilities. You probably focus in on the skills and abilities most, they would be your priority, but you'd need to try and make sure that somewhere in your application or on your CV, you were demonstrating that you had these skills. So it's a bit of, again, it's a bit of a checklist. So that's just a couple of examples of what you might, what information you might have that would help you tailor your CV. Okay. It's really important on your CV to use appropriate language. You've got to make sure your CV sounds really positive. Avoid saying anything like, I don't have much experience in, even if it's a kind of but, just avoid any negative language at all. Just promote what you have got. Avoid any jargon or acronyms that you think the employer won't understand. It can be a bit tricky to know what they will and won't understand, but one of the most common things I see is sometimes students might include like module codes or things that are very specific to the University of Birmingham that an employer is just not going to know what it is. So just try and make sure that everything you're including is likely to be understood by anybody. Is anybody in the industry. And some of the kind of like positive active words that you can use are listed here. So these kinds of words are really, really good to use when you're kind of starting sentences on your CV. So when you're talking about things you've done in the past and any experience you have, this is a really good way of kind of working in language that's going to make you sound as good as possible, essentially. It's going to really help to sell what you've got and what you've done in the past. When you're looking at information about the opportunity, so when you're on the company's website, or if you've got their job advert, if they're using particular active words like these, it's kind of quite good to try and mimic them where you can. It just will make it a little bit more likely that it will resonate with them, and what you're saying will resonate with them. You're kind of matching your language to theirs. And here, these are some tips in terms of, you know, what your CV should look like. Again, it kind of seems fairly obvious, but it's really easy to get wrong. It really needs to look like a professional document, and try and avoid really chunky paragraphs. Bullet points are much easier for someone to skim read, and your employer will skim read your CV. They won't sit down with a cup of tea and pore over it. They'll take seconds over it. So bullet points make it much, much easier for them to skim read. And avoid things like tables or using a variety of fonts and font styles and stuff, because it will just make it look far too busy. So keep it simple. Don't include a photo on your CV for any opportunities you're applying to in the UK. The etiquette in the UK is to not include a photo on your CV unless you're applying for a job where what you look like matters. So if you are applying for any acting or modelling jobs, then go ahead. But if you're applying for anything in tech, then it's a no. You can sometimes kind of make it look a bit more impressive in terms of design. So you don't have to stick to a black and white CV. But I would say only start to include design if you're applying for a role where your design skills are important. So if you are applying for anything like where you're going to be designing websites, web pages, or if you are applying for anything that involves kind of like any graphic design or anything like that, then by all means demonstrate your design skill through your CV. But otherwise, keep it simple. Black and white is absolutely fine. These are the sections that you should include on your CV. I should say in personal details, your name, phone number and email address is absolutely fine. You don't need to include any more than that. There's no need to include like a date of birth. There's no need to include your nationality. You don't have to include your address either. You can indicate where you're based, so you might want to put based in Birmingham, or if you've got a base in London, for example, you can put based in Birmingham and London, for example. But that gives the employer then a bit of an indication of kind of whether or not their location will suit you. But you don't have to put anything about your address or your location if you don't want to. I'm going to go through each of the other sections in turn. So you should include a profile on your CV, and a profile is probably the only place where you will have a paragraph, but it should be very, very short. This is an example. This is quite a simple profile, but it gives you a bit of a gist. So you'll say where you are, what you're doing at the moment. You'll mention a key piece of experience or a key skill that you've got that's going to be relevant to them. And you'll say what you're looking for, making sure that that's tailored to them. So in this example, they've highlighted their degree course. They said they're a computer science undergraduate. So the employer in their head, that's a tick, because if they're looking for a computer science graduate, then that's a tick for them. They've mentioned that they're experienced in Java and C++, so presumably that will have been on the job description. That is something the employer is looking for, because this person has gone to the effort of mentioning it at the top of their CV in their profile. And they've mentioned some work experience as well, and they've said what they're looking for. So I would hope that this profile would be going to a global leader in finance for a software engineering role, because if it's not, it's completely irrelevant and the CV will probably go in the bin. So this is why it's really, really important to tailor your CV to the person who's going to be reading it. And I've mentioned before about using bullet points. So this is a bit of an example about how they might look. So it's really important with your education and with your experience to include dates and name of the institution or the organisation you're working for, and a job title, or with your education it will be your degree, and then include bullet points explaining what you did and what skills you used. And here, this is how your education can look. You'll see that this is actually really quite concise. You can add in modules with your degree, so you can list those. Probably want to do them horizontally across the page, so don't take up too much space. But your education really doesn't need to be taking up too much space on your CV. You can just stick to kind of the facts, really. Also, your education experience should go in reverse chronological order. So it should, at the top, you'll have the most recent thing that you've done. Right, I'm going to show you a couple of examples of CVs. We'll do them one at a time, and it would be really good if you could. I've just got a question. Oh, okay, so to answer your question then, Anwin, really you should only put modules down that you have done in the past or that you're currently doing. So I wouldn't put next semester's modules down just yet, unless you're applying for, depends whether you're in your final year. So if you're applying for a graduate job, you could put them down to say you're going to do them, because you'll have done them by the time you start. Yeah, okay. Yeah, you need to indicate, you definitely need to indicate in some way that that's in the future. So you could put future modules include, for example. The tense shouldn't matter, because you're literally just going to list the module title, so there isn't really a tense. If you put something like future modules, then that's fine. What was the question? Yes, yeah. Very good point, Dan. Yeah, absolutely. You can include a link to your LinkedIn in your profile. And in fact, if you've got like a website or a portfolio online, or anything that you kind of want to drive potential employers to, you can definitely include it in your profile. Yes. Yeah, I'll get the slides over to you. That's fine. No worries. Right. So I'm going to share CV example with you. So this is, it's a bit of an awkward one. I'll probably have to show you kind of one page at a time. Scroll down. I'll show you a bit at a time. So in a face-to-face session, I'd be able to just like hand them out to you. And if any thoughts, anything that comes to mind about the CV, good or bad, feel free to just pop it in the chat, share your thoughts. Or if there's anything you're not sure about as well, like you can see something they've done, you're not sure whether that's good or bad, you can ask that question as well. I appear to not be able to see the chat function now. Oh, there we go. I've got it back. Yeah, well spotted, George. John Dude 93. Nice. It's interesting that appears to be a Genie email address though. I'm not sure that they'd have given him that, but never mind. Yeah, obviously the phone number's made up. Yeah, he's taking up loads of space with the person inside. Yeah. Yeah, loads of comments on formatting and stuff. Yeah. Oh, percentages. Yes. Good question. So, I've lost the chat again. I don't think my laptop can cope with doing too many things at once. The percentages, so you can put at the end of each of your module titles, you can put the percentage you got for that if you want to. You don't have to. Obviously, if you've done really well in your course, or if you've done particularly well on a module that you think is going to be particularly relevant to the role, you can include them if you want. But it's not like compulsory. Normally, employers, particularly for graduate jobs, they will, a graduate job, particularly with a large company, they'll probably request a copy of your transcript anyway. So they'll ask for like what you can get from the university that details what you've got in each module. So they'll normally kind of get that information another way if they really want it. But obviously, if you're kind of trying to sell yourself to get an interview, it's good. Oh, I can't get the chat back. I'm going to just stop sharing my screen because I think it's sorry folks, it for some reason it won't let me, I can't cope with having the share screen and the chat going on at the same time. Did he have to put home and turn time address? No, you don't have to put either. You certainly don't want to put both. I mean, because that potentially is just a bit confusing, and they're not going to post you anything, so they don't really need to know where you live. You know, these days they're just not going to be putting anything in the post, so you don't. It's not necessary. So LG said, is the 2-column education year thing standard? No, I'd avoid doing it, to be honest. Columns on your CV, because when someone's skim reading a document, they want to be able to skim read it, and they don't want their eye to be kind of like going from one column to the next. Reese, you've said, could you put instead the equivalent grade? Do you mean instead of the percentage of the module? Because you're probably better off putting the percentage. Yeah, you're probably better off putting the percentage. Just because really you don't get a degree classification until you've got your degree. So it looks a bit weird putting a module title in then like first or 2-1. That makes sense. LG said, yeah, modules should be horizontal. It saves space. I mean, they don't have to be, but the reason is that it saves space. So there were loads of messages in that chat. I'm wondering if it might be possible to export the chat at the end as well. To go along with the recording potentially. Yeah, for you guys, I'm not going to save it, but if you guys want to keep it, then you can export the chat. Right. So, for this CV as well, I'm not sure if anyone pointed it out, but they need to use bullet points and elaborate on some of the work experience as well. Even working at Tesco, so it might not feel like it's hugely relevant, but a little bit more of an explanation about the skills that we use, because there'll be transferable skills like problem solving and teamwork and communication that are all going to be really relevant. And the projects on this one could do with being reorganised a bit, because you could do with having like a title for each project, just so that if someone's skim reading it, like that stands out, and if the title catches their attention, they'll notice it. They'll want to read more about it. Sorry. Also hobbies. So they've just kind of listed running, travelling, computer games, science fiction. When you're including your interests on your CV, you need to evidence how there's a kind of like an element of commitment or achievement involved in that interest. So, you know, are you part of a group or where people are kind of relying on you to turn up and there's a kind of element of commitment? They put running, so perhaps they've run a marathon for charity, for example, or a 10K for charity. How is travelling different to going on holiday? So in travelling, was there any kind of like voluntary work or like community projects or anything like that? And I suppose kind of it's good to avoid things that like loads of people will have done, unless you can really explain how there was a particular level of commitment for you or a particular achievement. So if you're part of a sports team that's you know, got so far in a league or something, then that's great. You kind of just need a bit of evidence really. So avoid just kind of listing things that just sound really generic. I hope that makes sense. I'm not sure to explain that very well. Right. Does references run across? Well, yes, that's a good point as well. So you don't need to include your full referee details on your CV. So don't feel you have to like put their contact details down. But equally, you don't have to put anything. It's quite common to see references available on Quest, but yeah, it doesn't really add anything. You're absolutely right, Jake. So you don't have to put anything at all. But if you kind of really feel like you must put something, then you can put it. I'd just say avoid putting their full contact details, because you only really want your references to be contacted if they're interested in interviewing you. Ideally offering you the job. At that point they contact your references, but you only really want them contacting references if they're going to interview you. You don't want a situation where you've sent your CV out to loads of companies and some of them start contacting references before they even like get in touch with you. So that's the reasoning behind that really. Yeah, so LG said about including experience in other fields. Is it worth mentioning it in the profile? It depends on what you're applying for. But yeah, if it's been a substantial part of your career, it might be worth mentioning it. But it depends a little bit on what you're going to apply for, and if anything about the teaching is relevant to the role, which it will be. Your profile should only be very, very short though, and you're just mentioning very specific things for that job to encourage them to read the rest of your CV. So I suppose it depends on the job you're going for, LJ. I think that answers that. Let me know in the chat what you think of this one as well, and if you've got any questions about this one. This one's a little bit different. Yeah, no profile. Yeah, very concise. This one's 1 page, so the previous one was 2 pages, this one's 1 page. Yeah, good question, Mania. So should a CV be 1 or 2 pages? It can be either. It depends really how much information you're trying to get across. I really would expect to see a 2-page CV probably, but there are circumstances where you might feel a 1-page CV is better, particularly if an employer has said, sometimes they stipulate, sometimes they'll say submit a 1-page CV. But 2 pages for a graduate is normally about the length it should be, and it certainly should be either one or the other. So try and avoid, if you can, like 1.5 pages, because it can just look a bit strange. Obviously formatting wise it just looks a bit better if you've filled both pages. Yeah, so LG's asked if it's normal to list education before work experience. You can do. You can do it either way around though. So it depends, I suppose, what you want them to read first, what you feel is most relevant. If you've got some really fantastic work experience, you might want to put it before your education. So yeah, so a couple of you have picked up on capitalisation issues and using uppercase, not using uppercase letters. Yes, Alan's asked if it's okay to omit the profile. I would say no. You really ought to have a profile at the top of the CV. Oh yeah, good question. So Khalil's asked how to highlight projects developed, how to highlight projects you've developed on your CV. You can literally just have a section called projects and give it a title. It's good if you can to try and indicate like dates, so roughly when you did it. You can just, so on this CV they've kind of just got years, like that's fine. And then kind of like then bullet point and explain what you did and what skills you used. So in exactly the same way as experience, really, you probably just give it the section its own title, such as projects. I hope that makes sense. Oh yeah, so Munir's pointed out that on this one that the black lines help to separate sections. So yeah, lines can be a good thing to use. I would say these ones are a little bit thick, but they can be a good way of kind of helping to separate out sections a bit, yeah. Okay, cool. Oh, modules are hard to be distinguished. I'm not quite sure what you mean, George, but usually because they're a module title, you'd use uppercase letters, but this is probably about right. You'd normally just list them. The technical skills section is almost like a profile. It's a bit different to profile. A profile is a very short paragraph, like a couple of sentences. Whereas this one, they've kind of split it up. It's in the same place as a profile, but it's definitely more like a skills section, should say. Okay. So that's a bit of an overview of CVs. Hopefully you found that useful. If you've got any questions, just pop them in, other questions about anything to do with CVs, just pop them in the chat and I'll answer them. And whilst you're doing that, just wanted to go through things that you can do to like build your CV. So things like competitions and hackathons are really good things to do. And I've got some links to some that you might want to have a look at. You can also create your own work. I should actually say a bit more about hackathons actually. So companies, particularly large companies, will create competitions for students to participate in. They're quite often open to students of any degree discipline as well. And you can develop your technical skills through the competition. That you don't have to necessarily have technical skills, you know, to do them, but you guys will be an advantage because you will have. And the reason that a lot of companies do them is because then they can spot talent, so they can see who does really well and who's kind of, you know, can learn quickly and pick it up quickly. So they're a really good thing to do, so you can put them on your CV that you've done them, and you can win awards and prizes and stuff as well. Like you can win kind of like, I don't know, iPads and stuff like that kind of thing that can sometimes be given away. But they're actually really important because you might kind of get almost talent spotted by the company. And certainly you might get, you know, invited to like networking events with people who work for the company and things like that. So not only are they good for your CV, but there are other benefits to them as well. You can create your own experiences as well. So you can get involved with something called, I don't know if any of you guys have heard of the Enactors Society. So if you're interested in kind of collaborating with other students on kind of like social change projects and solving problems and using your technical skills to do that, then it's worth having a think about. I've got a link that I'll pop in the chat in a moment if you're interested in that. So I've put on here, you can build your own game. If you're interested in getting into gaming, obviously you can have a go at building your own very basic, it doesn't have to be complicated game as well. And I've got some more information about that I'll send over with the slides. I've got a bit of a info sheet about that. Obviously, if you're particularly interested in getting into the gaming industry, it's a good thing to do, because you can kind of showcase your skills really, and your passion and interest. Like if you've gone to the effort of doing it in your own time, then obviously the employers are going to love that because it means that you're kind of genuinely interested in working in the gaming industry. You can do internships and work experience as well. So you can do summer internships with employers. There's virtual internships that took place in the summer just gone because of the pandemic, so remote ones that students did from home, and we're hoping that we'll run just as many of those this summer. So you can apply to those through us. You'll find them directly with companies as well that are advertising, but we've got like a virtual internship scheme you can apply to through us, and I'll pop some. I'm going to pop a link in the chat to our work experience resources on our web pages as well. And you can also, mentoring is a really good thing to do, as in getting a mentor, so being mentored. So you can quite often get a really good insight into a particular job role or industry from a mentor. So we've got a mentoring program in Careers Network that you can apply to. The autumn one's closed now, but the spring one opens in January. So if you're interested in kind of like being paired up with somebody who works in industry to learn from them, then do apply to our mentoring scheme. Just gonna, and sorry, I don't know what's happened. And so you can also, there is an opportunity at the moment through Careers Network to do the opposite. So you can, it's called reverse mentoring. So essentially you can go into a company and work with them on their recruitment processes to help them make sure they've got more diverse recruitment processes, really, that help to make sure that they're reaching all students and graduates. And we've got a couple of opportunities with a couple of tech firms as well, FTM Group and SOTI. If you're interested in that, I really would encourage you to apply. The deadline is Sunday, though. So if you're interested in that, then please do apply. You have to be from the West Midlands, so your kind of family home has to be in the West Midlands. But yeah, so yeah, and let me just, I'll just, while I'm here, pop all this lot in the chat as well, so you've got it. But I'll get the slides over to you all as well. Let me just pop the reverse mentoring one in. Just want to highlight as well, so we've got a CV checker that you can upload your CV to. So if you want some instant feedback on your CV, do upload it to our CV checker. So it's kind of like automated feedback, really. But it means you don't have to wait ages for one of us to get back to you. It's like it's instant. And I'm going to just pop this one in the chat as well. We run top tip sessions. It's kind of a bit similar to what I've been through today. But if you want to get some more information about CV writing, or if you're interested in like a similar session by Careers Network on something other than CVs, so like a session a bit like this, but on interviews or creating a LinkedIn profile, using LinkedIn, that kind of thing, have a look at our top tip sessions as well. Let me just check and see if any questions have gone in. Put a skill you're learning, and maybe in brackets put learning. When you're talking about your skills, explain kind of what you're doing to learn them. So if you're using that skill, if you're learning that skill in a project you're doing or at uni or whatever, you're using it. Avoid trying to kind of use words like beginner, because immediately that can put, you might be underselling yourself, and it might make you sound like you're more towards the beginning than you actually are. I hope that makes sense. Is it worth mentioning hackathons, even if you didn't win any awards? Adnan asks. Yes, yeah, I would. If you participated, I would put it on your CV. It's worth mentioning that there are a lot of student win hackathons in London. Yeah, so some of the ones that I've just posted in the chat, they're running like now, yeah, and run from about October to February. Oh, sorry, student ones. Sorry. Yes, yeah, absolutely. And if you want to share, if you can share details about any that you know about, that would be great. What I would do, Anwin, is I would talk about them in your technical skills section. So skills section, list the skills, underneath each skill talk about how you've used it wherever, and that can include your degree. Rather than putting it in your education section, include that evidence in your skills section. I hope that makes sense. Yeah, so LG's asked about templates. So CV templates. The answer to that is no, I haven't found any. I haven't found a particularly good CV template, actually, that you could use. My suggestion very much would be use the CV checker. So just put together a CV, upload it to CV checker and see what feedback it gives you and go from there. The thing with doing it that way is it will very much be your own CV, and you'll avoid kind of what you don't want is you don't want to apply for a job where your CV is formatted almost identically to some of the people that have applied because they found the same CV template. So I know that's not helpful, necessarily doesn't feel very helpful. Use the info I've given you today to put something together and then just upload it to CV checker. No human sees it, so don't worry about like someone laughing at it or anything. You just get the automated feedback, and then that will tell you what you need to do to make it suitable for an employer. Yeah, it's a bit disappointing. It's hard to find good templates, to be honest. Maybe in the summer I'll have time to create some. Are there any projects or own work experience that look particularly good specifically for internships? I'd say anything where you're using your technical skills and transferable skills as well. So transferable skills like, communication skills, teamwork, non-technical skills, basically. I would just say anything. I mean, what you'll probably find is, and what employers say a lot, is that it's not necessarily about what you've done, but it's how you present it. So how you talk about that in your applications, how you talk about it in an interview, that is actually a lot more important than what you've actually done. So that's where kind of tailoring your CV comes in, and highlighting skills that you've used that they're going to be interested in. It might be from a variety of different things that you've done. So no, that might not feel very helpful, but it's more about how you present it rather than what experience you've done. Yeah, so Alex has asked about mentioning game jams even if you're not applying for the role of the game company. Yeah, because you're bound to have used skills that are still relevant to that employer, or you'll have learnt to use new skills very quickly, even if I don't know, even if they use different systems and stuff, and they're looking for slightly different skills. The point is, you'll have learned things very, very quickly. So I'd definitely still mention it. They'll still be very interested in hearing about it. Yeah. Okay. Oh, Callan, I'm not sure if the question relates back to something else, but you said, do I need to include the profile section or could I exclude it? I mean, you should include a profile section on CV. I don't know whether you were asking whether there is something you should include in your profile section. But you should definitely include one. it looks, oh, yeah. Oh, that's a good question. So Gabrielle's asked, if you mention games or projects in your CV that were published under an online username rather than a real name, if that seems unprofessional. I don't think it would be seen as unprofessional. It might depend a bit on what the username was. I wouldn't have thought so. No, I wouldn't have thought so. Yeah, it might just, it depends what the username is, obviously. If the name in itself isn't very professional, like the email address that was on the CV earlier, it was like John Dude. So yeah, so it might depend what it is. But I don't think it would matter necessarily it was a different name. Seems to be it for questions. So yeah, so we'll finish there. That's all right.